When I was living and working in London in my mid-20s, I found myself one night in the back of an oak-panelled boardroom in the oldest private bank in the world, listening to James Bond ask for my money. Yes, James Bond was asking for my hard-earned pounds in the oak-panelled boardroom of the oldest private bank in the world. And as hands went up around the room, pledging multiples of thousands of pounds to the charity that Daniel Craig was associated with, I realised at that point in my life that I had two problems. The first, I only had a few £100s in my bank account. And the second was I had absolutely no idea that night where the money I was going to give was going to go, what difference it would make, what impact it would have. I didn't know it at the time, but that night changed the course of my life. Many years later, I returned back to Sydney, and I got together with a few like-minded friends. We're in our mid-20s, and we decided we wanted to do something to give back to our own local community. We decided there were two problems we wanted to try and solve. The first was that we believed our generation genuinely want to do good, want to live lives of purpose and meaning. But we all lack the time, the knowledge, and the infrastructure to do so in a way that's meaningful to us and that makes a difference. And the second problem we wanted to try and solve, and I'm more sure of this issue more than ever today, is that early stage social purpose organisations in this country lack access to capital and networks to help them grow. We as a nation don't starve our for-profit companies with capital at the start of their journeys. So why do we starve the businesses that are creating the solutions to our country's most pressing problems with capital at the start of theirs? We shouldn't. Two problems. People that want to give back and don't know how, a whole group of early stage social organisations that can't access capital. So we decided to create a movement. Our concept, really simple. We'd ask 10 people to invite 10 friends to give $100. 10 by 10 by 100, that's $10,000. We ran an event in a room just like this one night where we asked 3 early stage social purpose organisations, 3 early stage charities, that are coming up with innovative solutions to complex social problems, to a night that was a mixture of a pitching contest for charities, a networking event, and a cocktail party. And when everyone arrived that night, we gave them back their $100 in the way of 2 $50 charity vouchers. And after the people in the audience heard the 3 pitches, they decided where they wanted to allocate their capital. We did one other really important thing that night, and we asked 10 people from the audience to be part of the organising committee for the next 10 by 10 event to make sure we were never pulling on the same pool of people and that the model would always grow and scale. I just thought that night that it was just going to be my one event per year where I would just do something to give back. I could pat myself on the back, go back to my finance job, and feel good about myself. But that night, a model took flight, and 16 people put up their hands to be part of the organising committee for the next event. That night was 13 years ago, and tomorrow we have our 174th 10 by 10 event. 10 by 10 grew from Sydney to Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, New York, London, right around the world. We've now had over 25,000 people come and give at our events. We've supported over 450 early stage social purpose organisations and unlocked over $25 million for charity. Let's hear it. That stuff's hard. It's not easy. But it's not just about the dollars and the impact that we made, but about the stories of the people we helped. Let me tell you the story of an incredible brother and sister combination here in Sydney called Laura and Jordan O'Reilly. Laura and Jordan had a younger brother, Shane, who lived with disability. He had cerebral palsy. And they saw in their brother the incredible ability that they felt he had in his life, but that society didn't afford him the same opportunities that they had. Yet they felt he was so capable. So they decided to start an organisation called Fighting Chance that helped people right across the disability spectrum into meaningful employment opportunities in social enterprises. They took payments from the government's National Disability Insurance Scheme, and instead of having carers come and play puzzles with kids, they had them working with kids in social enterprises, working with kids towards living with disability to meaningful outcomes in their lives. If they didn't understand the value of money, they would work toward an experience, cruising down the Hawkesbury with Lee Kernahan, a trip to Wonderland, a whole number of experiences that would enrich the lives of people living with disability and give them purpose. That night, some 12 years ago now, they pitched at a 10 by 10 event in Sydney. And in the room was a gentleman who just sold his business, a childcare business, to a large global private equity fund. He had a sister who'd struggled with disability his whole life. And hearing the story of Laura and Jordan really spoke to him. And following that night, he decided to give Fighting Chance a $1.8 million grant to significantly leverage the impact of their work across Australia. On that night, Fighting Chance just had 23 kids in one centre in suburban Sydney. And today, some 12 years on, they've not only grown to over 14 centres right across Australia, serving in over 1,000 kids, but they launched a social enterprise called Higher Up, which serves over 10,000 people living with disability and has an annual revenue of over $30 million. One idea, one movement, big impact. Throughout the course of my life, I've always done 10 by 10 and my work in the community as a side hustle. I always saw my roles in the world as separate. I had my finance career over here and my social impact side hustle over there. I always saw the two as totally distinct from one another. But then one day I thought, what if we could unlock an Australia where we could fund the next incredible generation of Laura and Jordans? The social entrepreneurs that lie at the heart of our society that are driving real, meaningful change at scale. They all struggle with the same problem. They can't get access to meaningful capital to leverage the work that they do. I was working in one of Australia's large superannuation funds at the time, and I saw one of the other great challenges that I believe we face in our financial ecosystem. And that is institutional capital investors are always conscious of investing with being conscious of our social license. But we must always invest in opportunities that are genuinely in the members' best financial interest and can drive the best economic return. That creates a natural barrier for the unlock of capital to fund social innovation. What if we could create a product which aligned financial interest with impact in our own community? I had an idea. What if we went to the world's leading asset management firms and asked them if we could invest into their funds completely fee-free, and then the fees we would generate from our fund, we could grant back into the community? There was only one problem. Asset management firms, you may be aware, are not predicated on the concept of giving away their product for free. And so they asked me when I came to them with this request, why on earth would we do that? We are fund managers, we have houses in the Hamptons, rent to pay in Mayfair, we don't get these things by giving our stuff away for free, why should we do it? I said for 3 reasons. Number one, you've built big businesses in Australia, and this is a great way of you contributing back to your local community. Number 2, you've increasingly got people all around the world that work for you that actually care about how your firm's acting with its social license. And 3, we'll give you a cross-sell into all the Australian institutional investors that get behind this movement. And a little bit of more arm twisting, they said yes. And I went back to my employer at the time, one of the biggest superannuation funds who was going through a large merger, and I said, guys, I want to spin out and do this, and I want you guys to put the first $100 million in. And they said, you're completely crazy. We're going through a merger. This isn't really what we do. But we had a little bit of track record because what we've done at 10 by 10, and they said to me, here's the deal. We'll put the first $100 million into this fund, but only if you get someone else to match it with another $100 million. And I thought to myself, how the hell am I going to raise $100 million? I've only ever raised a few $100 donations from my mates at 10 by 10 events. $100 million sounds like a much taller ask. But my sales strategy was this. I'll go to everyone I've met in the industry over the course of my career that I felt has a heart. By the way, I worked in finance, so it was quite a narrow pool. And I found one guy who I knew quite well that had actually been on a 10 by 10 committee, who worked at one of the super funds, and he said, I love this. I think I'm good for 30 to 50 million. And I was absolutely over the moon. I thought, I'm away here, this thing's gonna get off the ground. And it was the end of September 22, and I'll never forget the day because the equity market had just sold off, meaning stocks had gone down a lot. And he rang me one day and he said, Laurence, I actually don't think we can do it. But I've got another guy in the fund who runs a different pool of capital. Maybe you can get the money from him and, quote, we can find some money from behind the couch. So I went back in to see this fund. I took my business partner and I went in and I pitched him the vision for community capital. And it was the worst meeting of my entire life. The guy didn't look at the pitch book. His arms were crossed like this. He was staring out the window. He didn't ask me a single question until right at the end of my presentation, he asked me one thing. He said to me, so mate, where's the money going? I said, sorry. He said, where's the money going? I said, oh, you mean the grants? He said, yes. I said, well, we haven't set up the fund yet, so we had no examples of organizations which actually granted to. But I had an example of organizations which supported at 10 by 10. And the only example I had in my pitch book was an organization called Streetside Medics that provide a medical outreach service to people experiencing homelessness and reduced cost on the medical system through early intervention. But for whatever reason in that meeting, I decided not to give that example. I gave the example, I don't know why, of Fighting Chance, of Laura and Jordan. And as I'm telling the story of Laura and Jordan, the gentleman's whole demeanor in the meeting changes. He's suddenly engaged in my presentation, he's nodding, and then he says to me, this is a stitch-up, right? I said, sorry. This is a stitch-up. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you must have known. I said, what did I know? He said, well, you must have known that my wife and I have a daughter with disability. We send her to Fighting Chance, and it's changed our family's life. They put in the 50 million. A few months later, we raised another 200. And just 3 weeks ago, we closed our second fund and now raised over $1 billion into this asset management company, which donates all its fee revenue back into the community to funding the next generation of incredible social entrepreneurs. And there are a bunch of them up on the stage. People working in issues of domestic violence, working with incarcerated youth, First Nations, education, a whole number of organizations doing incredible work. And we believe that we can help build an Australia where the people solving our toughest social problems have every chance to succeed. Friends, I don't know if, when I heard Daniel Craig that night, I didn't know it was going to spark this chain of events that would change the course of my life. And I don't know if there was serendipity in that moment, or if, as my rabbi convinces me is the case, there's been divine intervention the whole way. But what I do know is this. When you embed in your life your actions with a sense of purpose, when the opportunities emerge for you to take action, and you can, these are the types of things that can happen, and this is the change you can be and see in the world. Thank you.